Have you ever read a page, nodded along, felt like you understood it, and then realized a few seconds later that none of it stayed with you? You look back at the words and think, I just read this, but it already feels unfamiliar. That moment can feel embarrassing, but it isn't a personal failure. Most people quietly assume it means they weren't focused enough. They think they were distracted, lazy, or mentally weak in that moment. But research on attention and memory suggests something very different is usually happening. This experience shows up in small, ordinary moments. You read an email at work and immediately forget what it asked you to do. You scroll through an article and later can't explain its main point. You reread the same paragraph multiple times and still feel lost. The usual explanation is simple: I wasn't paying attention. It sounds reasonable, and it fits our culture's obsession with focus and discipline. But it doesn't explain why this happens even when you feel like you are paying attention. You can be sitting quietly, phone face down, genuinely trying to concentrate, and still forget what you just read. There are no obvious distractions in the room. And yet, the information slips away almost instantly. Research suggests that attention is not a single switch you turn on. It is a fragile, limited system that is constantly being pulled in different directions, even when you feel calm. Your brain is always processing more than you realize. When you read, your brain is doing several things at once. It is recognizing words, connecting them to meaning, checking them against what you already know, and deciding whether they are important. All of this happens automatically and quietly. At the same time, your mind is still running background processes. It is monitoring time, thinking about upcoming tasks, reacting to small sensations, and managing emotional states. None of this feels dramatic, but it consumes mental resources. Studies on working memory show that you can only hold a small amount of information in an active, usable form at once. When that space is crowded, new information has nowhere to settle. It passes through without being stored. So when you read, the words may reach your eyes, but they never fully enter that limited mental workspace. They are processed just enough to feel familiar, then discarded. It feels like reading, but it is more like skimming without realizing it. This is why forgetting can happen even during easy reading. Short emails, simple articles, and casual posts often disappear faster than complex material. Your brain treats them as low priority and invests less effort in holding onto them. Digital environments make this even harder. When you read on a phone or laptop, your brain stays in a state of partial alertness. It is always prepared for the next notification, message, or tab. Even if nothing interrupts you, that readiness remains. Part of your attention is reserved for what might happen next. That divided state weakens memory formation. Research on media multitasking suggests that switching between tasks, even briefly, leaves lasting residue. A small part of your mind stays with the previous activity. When you start reading, you are not starting from zero. So you may be reading while still mentally finishing a conversation, replaying a video, or planning your next task. None of this feels like distraction. It just feels like being normal. Another factor is mental fatigue. After hours of thinking, deciding, and reacting, your brain becomes less efficient at encoding new information. It does not shut down, but it becomes selective. When you are tired, your mind prioritizes immediate demands over long-term storage. It focuses on getting through the moment rather than building lasting memory. Reading becomes shallow, even if you care about the content. This often shows up in office environments. You read reports, messages, and documents all day. By the afternoon, everything starts to blur together. You are still working, still responding, still functioning. But very little of it sticks. The system is running, but it is running on low power. Emotional background also matters. Mild stress, uncertainty, or pressure quietly competes with reading. Your brain keeps scanning for potential problems in the background. Even low-level worries use cognitive resources. You may not feel anxious, but part of your mind is busy managing unease. That leaves less space for new information. Another uncomfortable truth is that familiarity creates an illusion of understanding. When something looks clear and simple, your brain assumes it does not need deep processing. It relaxes too early. You recognize the words, follow the sentences, and feel like you understand. But you never fully integrate the meaning. Without that deeper processing, memory remains weak. This is why rereading often feels strange. The material looks familiar, yet empty. You remember seeing it, but not absorbing it. Many people interpret this as personal inadequacy. They think something is wrong with their intelligence or attention span. But the pattern appears across age groups, professions, and education levels. It reflects how modern cognitive environments operate. We are surrounded by information, demands, and low-level stimulation. Our brains adapt by conserving effort wherever possible. Forgetting quickly is not a defect. It is often a sign of an overloaded system trying to cope. The mind protects itself by letting go. This does not mean you are incapable of learning or understanding. It does not mean you are lazy, careless, or unfocused by nature. It means your cognitive resources are being stretched thin. It also does not mean that everything you read is pointless. Even when you forget details, exposure still shapes familiarity, context, and general understanding. Learning is not all or nothing. Much of it happens quietly and indirectly. You may not recall exact sentences, but your brain still updates its internal map of the world. That process is slow and subtle. The uncomfortable realization is that forgetting is often the default, not the exception. Remembering requires specific conditions that are harder to achieve than we admit. Our daily routines rarely provide them. We live in environments designed for constant partial attention. We move quickly between tasks, screens, and conversations. Deep encoding becomes the rare case. So when you forget what you just read, it is not evidence of personal failure. It is evidence of how much invisible work your mind is doing just to keep up. It shows the cost of living in a cognitively crowded world. Understanding this does not magically fix the problem. It does not guarantee better memory tomorrow. But it changes the story you tell yourself. Instead of seeing forgetfulness as weakness, you can see it as feedback. It reflects mental load, context, and limits. It tells you something about how your environment is shaping your mind. Most of the time, your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It filters, prioritizes, and lets go. It protects energy by forgetting more than it keeps. And in a world that never really slows down, that may be the most realistic response it has.